All right, this is from Calvin Smith. And Calvin kind of makes a longer two statements and some questions integrated within them. And so I wanted to read this, but let me put it in a bigger screen there so you might be able to see it a little bit better. How can a determinist account for the ability of human beings to think? Let me just answer that question by saying I rationally don't think that they can. Okay. Now, either I think that because God determined me to think that, or I think it freely. And that's the problem. That's the irrational side of things. If you watch some of my broadcast about the rationality of Calvinism or determinism philosophically, then you've heard me deal with some of these irrational concepts. Just the free thinker argument from Tim Stratton, our friend, Dr. Tim Stratton, is getting on this very point. And much of the things you're asking about, Calvin, we'd probably enjoy hearing from Tim Stratton, and you might want to check out his side as well, because I think he's going to get into a lot of these philosophical questions that you're asking. You asked this, what I mean by this is if compatibilism is true and human beings can freely choose to do what they wish, however, their only choice is to do whatever the greatest desire is, which is determined by God, then how can that be defined as a choice? Good question. I don't think it can. And I think you're asking the very questions that we ask and that I consistently press Calvinists on, is that what you're calling choice doesn't seem to be a real choice or a meaningful choice if compatibilism is true. There can be only one greatest desire by definition, which means it's only one choice that can be made, which is therefore not really a choice, which by definition must be made between two or more options. Exactly. I think you're making a valid point. That is not thinking, it is programming. Agreed. That's one of the reasons we have the accusation of puppetry and robotics, those kinds of things, that a person's acting according to animal instinct, you've heard me talk about. That's more of a programming type of reaction than it is really a moral choice. And whatever response that the determinist makes in regard to this or any other argument against him is also predetermined according to their greatest desire. Then there is only one response they can give according to what God predetermined them to say or do. This is not thinking in my estimation, and according to any definition I've seen. If you believe what has been determined for you to believe, then logic could be bypassed, for example. And if logic was used, it would only be because it had been determined prior to the subject using it. Exactly. This is exactly the vertigo comment that William Lane Craig makes in his article responding to this, of determinism, that this vertigo, this dizzying vertigo sets in when you really begin to think about the implications of the deterministic claims. One can literally believe a complete nonsense as truth and have no way of accessing any type of reasoning tools to help them reassess whether they are thinking properly. Perhaps a question for Eric Hernandez could help unpack this. Actually, Eric has been on, as well as Braxton Hunter, talking about similar topics, if not identically, with compatibilism, dealing with compatibilism and determinism. If you do a search there at the website, you probably could find those, or at the YouTube page. Calvin continues, how do you think a determinist would answer this objection? Any tips on how to sharpen it? In my estimation, determinist completely undermines Christian apologetics. The free thinking argument is one that Tim Stratton makes, and it's very similar to this, and he does it more from a philosophical vantage point, which I think you would enjoy, Calvin. So check that out. And I think the rest of what you're talking about has to do with how does apologetics play into that? Why is apologetics useful? I actually have an interview with Eric Hernandez. If you type in his name and my name there at Soteriology 101, you should be able to find an article about the practical side of apologetics in a deterministic worldview and how that would look. And so hopefully that answers those questions.